fill in the blank. You're not getting any younger, so
wear sunscreen.
Hey you! Yes, you. Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast, a podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz, and every week I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? Hey, any youngers, it's me, your host, Jen Glantz. What is going on with you today? This episode is loaded with things that you're going to want to hear about. The guest and I talk about some really hot topics, things like what the heck is real on social media and what people are just completely making up. Plus, how to stop comparing yourself to every single thing you see online. Because I know for me, I waste so much time on Instagram looking at everyone else's lives and literally comparing everything about them to me. I'm like, how are they sitting here eating 10 pieces of pizza and all this ice cream and they look so skinny, yet I have 2 pieces of pizza and it wears on my thighs for weeks? Or how are they having all this money to travel all over the world constantly? Things like that constantly eat us up when we're on social media. But the cool thing about today's guest is she helps us figure out how to spot what's fake. And she does it in a really cool way. The other thing we talk about, and this topic is something so fresh, so new, so engaging for me, is the topic of getting engaged. That becomes such a big accomplishment for women that oftentimes we don't focus on other major successes that they have going on in their lives and give it as much value and as much weight. We talked about how when a person gets engaged, their social media blows up and people are so happy for them. And yeah, I just got engaged and it was a great feeling and I loved it. But then we have these other monumental moments of success in our lives that people just push toward the side. Like, why isn't getting a raise as big of an accomplishment as getting engaged or running a marathon or starting a side hustle or whatever it is that you have worked so hard to accomplish should be treated the same? Okay, let's talk about this week's guest. Hannah Orenstein is the senior dating editor at Elite Daily and the author of 2 novels. Her most recent one is called Love at First Like, and it's a rom-com about a jewelry store owner who accidentally leads her 100,000 Instagram followers to believe she's engaged. Yeah, that's what leads us into some crazy discussion about scamming people on Instagram, figuring out what's real and what's not, and making engagement not the biggest accomplishment of someone's life because there's much more things to be proud of people for. I really hope you enjoy this episode and come join the discussion. Tell us how you feel, what's going on in your head in the You're Not Getting Any Younger secret Facebook group. It's linked right now on your phone. You click that link, you go straight there. And also, while you're on your phone scrolling around, how about you scroll all the way down, hit some stars, give us a review on iTunes. It means the absolute world. Question to you might be a tough one, but how would you describe yourself to someone you met at a party?
Oh, sure. So my name is Hannah Orenstein. I am an author of 2 books, and I'm the senior dating editor at Elite Daily. I also really love cheese platters, and I have a slightly overweight but really adorable cat, and I recently moved to Brooklyn.
Ooh, that's a lot of fun facts. Where in Brooklyn do you live?
I just moved to Williamsburg. I was on the Upper East Side before that.
It's a big change. I was living in Murray Hill for 7 years, and now I'm in Williamsburg too. So we should walk by each other sometime. Which sort of leads me to my second question. I feel as though, I haven't seen you in years, but I feel as though I know so much about your life via social media. So one of the things I wanted to ask you personally is, how would you describe your relationship with social media?
So my relationship with social media definitely informed a lot of my thoughts about this book and maybe even inspired this book to an extent. I really love the community that comes from the writing community or the book community on Instagram. And I think that, I really am very lucky to have a relationship with a lot of my readers. And so to connect with them on Instagram is really fun because, I get to see what they're reading. We trade book recommendations. I get to see, their vacations and their families and their pets and their lives. So keeping up with that is a lot of fun. But I won't lie, sometimes it does get in your head, and it's really easy to think like, oh, I really should have posted that photo instead of this one, or I should have, edited it better, or I should have written a better caption. And some of that anxiety that comes with social media definitely fueled a lot of this book because Eliza, I think, enjoys social media. I think she enjoys how it lets her connect to other people. And in her specific case, as a business owner, I think she enjoys how it allows her to promote her business and promote her brand. But it does cause her a lot of stress.
Yeah, and let's dive right into it. Your book, Love at First Like, the main character, Eliza, she accidentally posts a photo of herself wearing a diamond ring on We All Know What Finger That Finger Is to her Instagram account, where she has 100,000 followers. So share with us what happens after she wakes up and realizes that she did that.
Yeah. So she posts the photo in a situation that I think would drive all of us a little bit over the edge. She discovers after the worst first date in history that her toxic on again, off again ex is engaged. And she feels really left out. And she feels not like she misses the guy. It's not about him, but it's about her feeling left behind and like she is behind all of her peers. And so that's what fuels this. And then when she wakes up in the morning and realizes her mistake, it spikes sales for her business. And I think the reason for that is because there's this certain class of influencers or business people who, the more they share about their personal lives, the more that you care about their businesses as well. I know that, I'll admit it, I love watching Leandra Medine Cohen's Instagram stories. And because of that, I read Man Repeller more often. And there's so many other influencers who are like that. So when she realizes that it's good for business around the same time, she also realizes that her store is in some financial trouble. So she conspires to set out and find this fake fiance to serve the role on Instagram of like being her fiance, so she can just keep followers more invested and turn some of that following into some sales.
Which is really why I took to this plot a lot, because I do feel like when we look at social media, we see all these people posting their lives and it seems like their personal life. But what's your opinion on that? All these influencers that you follow and the women that you follow on social media, how much of it do you think is their real life? And how much of it do you think they're pulling a little bit of an Eliza, maybe just showcasing the best parts, maybe just posting a ring or an outfit they tried on but they don't really own? How much of it do you really think is a part of the person, and how much of it do you think is a little bit fake?
It really depends. I think that if you are a critical thinker about social media, I think you can sort of suss out what's real and what's not. But that can often be really hard. Like, for example, I have a friend who works with an influencer, and outwardly it looks like the influencer wears these amazing different outfits every day because they're photographed and appear online. But my friend is like, no, like she wears the same jeans to work every single day and it's totally fake. But like on the other hand, I was recently speaking to an influencer who shared with me that she's young, she's in her early 20s, and she wishes that she could post sort of silly, candid photos with her boyfriends like she sees her friends doing. And she feels like she's under pressure to really have this curated life on Instagram. And she's like, I wish I could just be silly and be myself, but my followers expect photos that look really professional, so I can't do that. And so for her, that was a pressure that was, a little bit sad. So, I think you just have to be really careful and critical about looking at a photo and thinking like how much of this is really real. Ultimately, I think I became a little bit happier with the people that I followed on social media when I made an effort to follow people who seemed really authentic. So some influencers that I really like who put out content that I know feels really real. There's the blogger Grace Atwood, who runs her blog called The Stripe, and she has a really great podcast. And she is often very open and very candid about the pressures of being an influencer, not in an annoying way, but just to show, how she detoxes from social media, or how she refuels herself, or, she really wore this, but she posted this. So she was very candid about that, and I really like that. And if it's helpful, I can give some other names of people who I think do a great job of that as well.
Yeah, well, I love how you said that you made that conscious decision to follow people who you felt were more authentic. And since you've done that, it's made you happier. What was it before? Were you following people that made you feel jealous? And how did you make that shift?
I was following a lot of people who were like tangentially friends of friends. And then, of course, like they have a friend and they have a friend, and you get caught up in this whole web. And I was following a lot of people who were really creative and entrepreneurial and outgoing, but they were also very extremely wealthy socialites. And every day I would just sit in bed, like looking at their stories. And I was like, oh God, like how are they in the Hamptons and Palm Beach and at Coachella and at Art Basel, like every weekend? And it just made me feel like I wasn't doing enough, or, I should be also spending ridiculous amounts of money that I don't have on all these things. And taking a moment to step away from that and following people that made me feel excited and creative and fulfilled and rejuvenated was something that felt really good for me.
Yeah, and I think that's something we all have to go through of that I'm not doing enough, I'm not enough, look at me versus them for us to really make that shift because until we felt that, it's really hard to say enough. I'm only going to follow people who make me feel a certain way. I'm only going to follow people who I want to be friends with in real life because I know they feel like good people and not people who are maybe living these unauthentic lives or making us feel a ton of different things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As an editor in the dating world for Elite Daily, how do you think, or how have you seen through research that social media has changed how we view dating and relationships?
Oh, that's such a good question. I just wrote a reported feature on this. I have a lot to say on this topic, but I'll try to keep it brief. There are studies out there that show that the more often you post on social media about your relationship, the more likely it is that you are insecure about your relationship in some way. And I think that's pretty common knowledge. I think a lot of people are aware of that concept, even if they haven't read that exact study. What's really interesting to me is that today's college students, who are by and large part of Gen Z, are taking that to heart, and they are being much more private about posting their relationships on social media than slightly older people, like people in their 20s or millennials, might be. So I think that's a really interesting shift that moved toward privacy because they recognize that posting photos in which you look really happy and in love don't actually mean that you are happy and in love. I think the other really interesting thing to come out of my research with that is that social media has become a point of contention or a source of anxiety for a lot of people in their relationships. And this is true with college students and slightly older people as well. How many people have you heard, or maybe even you yourself, have gotten into sort of an argument with a significant other over, are we serious enough to post a photo on Instagram? Like, can I tag you on Facebook? Can we be Facebook official? Like, will you be embarrassed if I post this photo of you? So I think having those conversations does create a source of stress for some people. But on the flip side, it can bring joy. I think a lot of people really do enjoy seeing photos of their friends looking happy and in love on social media. I think it's really nice when you get nice comments about your relationship on social media. It's a great way to share updates with friends and family who might live further away and you don't get to see as often in person. So it's a complicated issue. I think if people have anxiety over it, they're certainly not alone. And I think the best tip really that I've heard about this is just to talk about it with your partner.
It's so true. I once dated someone who refused to post about me on social media. They would crop me out of photos. They pretended like I didn't exist. And it was horrible. And I hated that feeling. And then when I got into my serious relationship now with my partner, I didn't feel the urge to want to post on social media about him. Like, I posted an occasional photo and that was fine. But I guess when you're and you're so right, like when you are more insecure in that relationship, you want that social proof. And then when you're cool in the relationship, you're like, whatever. I was having so much fun in real life. I forgot to post a picture of me and you at dinner on a Friday night. That's what it feels like, right?
Right. But I do want to point out, I think it's interesting. For example, my boyfriend and I had a really fun day yesterday. So this morning I woke up and I was like, hey, I'm going to post this picture of us where we look really cute. And that has nothing to do with being insecure. I think the problem is when you make assumptions about how other people must feel. And that's sort of what I wanted to explore in this book too. Eliza posts this photo and everybody's like, oh my God, she's so happy and successful and she has everything and she has this hot guy and her life is perfect and her life is not perfect.
Oh, for sure. And I loved how Eliza, she was a little disheartened that she got more likes on her fake engagement photo than about starting her business. And I just have to tell you that hit home because when I recently just got engaged a couple weeks ago, I told my fiance, I told everyone like, hey, can we not post this on social media for a while? Like my game plan was not to post it for 6 months. I just wanted to like live it and deal with it and enjoy it. Of course, parents posted it after I said that and it didn't work. It blew up in my face, but that's probably my most liked photo ever. And like you, I've done so many cool things, but it's so true. And that leads me to my question. Why do you think getting engaged is an accomplishment for a person? Like, why do you think that people put this huge celebration around a person getting engaged, but let's say they get a promotion at work or a raise, or they started a really freaking cool side hustle. Why is that seen as, oh, well, you don't have the perfect package if you don't have that ring on your finger?
That is such a good question. That is such a frustrating, difficult question, just because it's something I wish that I could solve. And a lot of that feeling of, I'm killing it in my career and just not getting the praise for it that I wish that I could from family and friends, or even just from other people in my life. And instead they were focusing on my lack of a relationship. Like that was very frustrating for me in my early 20s. And so I think some of those feelings were what led to me writing this book. But I think some of the reasons are just structural, right? Like our culture is not very comfortable talking about money or talking about success. Some people, don't love talking about the nitty gritty details of their day. It can be really complicated or even kind of boring in some cases to be like, hey, like, let me tell you about this complicated situation with this meeting, with this coworker. I said this thing and it was a problem because of this project with this deadline and this amount of money. Like, that's complicated. Not everybody's going to get that. And you can't sum up that success when you raise your hand and make an amazing point in a meeting, or, you get the raise that you've really been advocating for yourself for so long. You can't sum that up on Instagram with one photo. Or if you do, it comes across as sort of like, oh God, like this girl is like really telling you how much she just got a raise for. Like, oh, okay. Like that stuff just doesn't happen in our culture. And I think we have a big problem celebrating career accomplishments or professional accomplishments or financial accomplishments. So I think that's part of it. And then I think the other part of it is that we are conditioned from birth, really, to see this happily ever after as the most important thing in your life. I think you can look at things like Disney movies, happily ever after. You can look at The Bachelor and that whole franchise with the engagement being this ultimate prize. And it's really easy to see how, of course, we're given all these messages about how having that engagement and that proposal, not even a happy relationship, but just that moment where somebody says, I want to be with you, here's a piece of jewelry. And it's really easy to take that and think that, of course, that's the most important thing, because that is what we repeatedly see being celebrated by so many different sources in our lives.
I'm just sitting here clapping my hands because I can't agree with you more. I do think that we have to also watch how we respond to people, because I know when I was single for many, many years of my life, but I had all these great things going on, and people would say, well, just so you know, Jen, because you've been successful in X, Y, and Z area, that's probably why you're still single.
Yeah.
And, even with your main character in your book, like she is a badass female entrepreneur in Brooklyn, crushing the game, but because she didn't have that piece associated with her, it did hurt her personal brand a little bit, and all these things. So what advice do you have for women out there who don't have it all that we've been trained to think we need to have at a certain age or a certain point in our lives?
That's such a good question. I would tell them to focus on what matters to them and just try to push away the extra noise. Like when your grandma says like, oh my God, you don't have a boyfriend yet? You know what? Like grandma means well. You don't need to take grandma's advice to heart. Instead, you can tell grandma that you're running a marathon, that you're writing a novel, that you just applied for a job and you think you're going to get it because you crushed the interview. Focus on what matters to you, because you can try to change how other people are going to respond, but you can't. All you can focus on is what's going to make you happy. And that's really hard, but there's no one path to success. There's no one route that your life has to follow in order to be successful or to be happy or to be satisfying. So to the extent that you can, find a way to block out the noise and just focus on what makes you happy.
I love it. Hannah's book is called Love at First Like. When people read this, and they will get through this book in 2 days max. You can't put this book down. I carried it with me. I loved it. I laughed out loud. When people hit that last page, what kind of feeling do you want them to have? And what overall message do you think that people can take from this book and pull back into their real life?
My number one goal is always to entertain. If this is like a roller coaster ride of a book for you where you can't put it down, I will feel like the happiest person on earth. So thank you for reading it. And I think the message is really to listen to what matters to you. You know, Eliza really just wants a badass, successful career surrounded by people that she loves. And that's what she aims for. And that's, you know, that's really what I would hope readers take away, that whatever your version of success looks like for you, chase after that, because that's all you need. You don't need the happily ever after. You don't need the big shiny ring unless you want it, in which case, you know, those are goals you can work toward too. So
I love
that's it. Thank you so much, Jen.
I love it. One final question for you. We end all interviews with this. Fill in the blank. You're not getting any younger, so
wear sunscreen.
I love it. Thank you so much, Hannah. Please tell our listeners where they can find out more about you and buy your book.
Yes. So I am at Hannah Orens on Twitter and Instagram. That's HANNAHORENS. And you can find my book on Amazon, Target, your local bookstore, Barnes & Noble, Hudson News, and at your local library.
Hey you. Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes, other ears around the world to listen to. Oh, and join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group. Over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives for good reason. To make it count. Until next week. All my love. Jen Glantz.